Hello, everybody. Tried to go live with this one. Sorry about that. Just couldn't figure out the technology. It was working in the past, but wasn't working today. Today is May the 3rd, Monday. Joe Tritola here. And our Monday morning training is going to be how to confidently present cancer insurance plans to your prospects and your clients. Real quick, few disclaimers. Definitely take a second or two and look this over. The main one that we want to focus on this one is if you are going to be presenting cancer insurance on the same time as a Medicare Advantage or a prescription drug presentation, you do want them to check that little box off on the scope of an appointment form. If you're going to go back to present cancer or hospital indemnity during a non-Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plan presentation, you don't require a scope of an appointment, but it is during the same presentation. So real quick, what is cancer insurance? As many of you already know, cancer insurance pays out a benefit upon a cancer diagnosis and or cancer in situ. Some policies don't pay out on pre-cancer and other policies do. So it's very important to understand that a little bit. I will tell you though, very rare does it happen where someone gets cancer in situ and then it does not translate into regular cancer. It's a bit rare, but if you're going to get cancer, unfortunately, the one you would want would be in situ. Typically, the more common type of benefit is one that's paid out as a lump sum. For example, Jane has been diagnosed with cancer. Her lump sum policy will pay her $20,000 as a result of her cancer diagnosis. So she gets the cancer, submits the claim, insurance company pays her a check for $20,000. The second kind, which is less common, I think Manhattan Life's policy is set up this way, and that's where they get an itemized benefit per service performed as a result of a cancer diagnosis. So, for example, Jane has been diagnosed with cancer. Jane's a she. She goes in for 4 days of radiation. He has to spend one night in the hospital. The cancer plan will pay $1,000 per hospital night stay and $250 for each day of radiation. So basically what you get with the itemized benefit one is you get a schedule of services and they assign a dollar amount to each of the different services. It's basically like a limited medical plan that just pays out upon cancer. So again, less common. The more common is the lump sum one. Who is the ideal client? So really everybody is the ideal client, but we're a Medicare focus group and this training is designed for Medicare agents. So the ideal candidates are going to be Medicare Advantage members, especially those in a Part B give back plan. Why? Because they have extra money to work with. Most MAPD plans cost 20% for cancer or chemotherapy. So if you ever looked at a summary of benefits for a Medicare Advantage plan, you have all these fixed amounts for the services, $10 for the primary, $30 for the specialist, $250 for outpatient, $14 for an x-ray. And then you get to the Part B drugs and the cancer, chemotherapy, and radiation, and it has it as expressed as a function of a percentage of the cost. So it's 20%. And, I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever looked at a summary of benefits of somebody that received, 6 or 7 weeks worth of cancer chemotherapy, it's not cheap. That 20% can immediately put them in a position where they would hit the maximum out of pocket very, very quickly. Secondly would be anybody that's turning 65 and they're opting to enroll in a Medicare Advantage or an MAPD plan. So you have existing MAPD members and new members going on. Why? Because people from the turning 65 arena are kind of used to paying for health insurance for the most part. And then finally, Part D plan members. And I worded it this way. I don't want to assume that everyone that has a Part D also has a Medicare supplement plan. There's a lot of people out there that just prefer to just go with just original Medicare A and B. So for people with Part D plans, whether they have a gap or not have a gap, a cancer plan can help them with the high cost of prescription drugs if prescribed. Many of these drugs can can cause somebody to nosedive very, very quickly into the coverage gap, which we all know is known as the donut hole. So very, very fast on that first fill, if they're on $1,000 a day pill and they go to fill it, 30-day supply, $30,000, that will push them right into the donut hole. That could be $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 out of pocket just to get that one medicine filled. And then they'll go into catastrophic, but even at $30,000 a month, catastrophic is $1,500. It's not cheap. So don't discount the fact that just because somebody has a Medicare supplement plan, they're covered if they get diagnosed with cancer. Yeah, their actual treatment in the hospital or the center is covered, like that physical service, but everything else that comes behind cancer is not covered by a health insurance plan. You get very expensive. Now, who is not an ideal client? So really, anybody that is in the D-SNP market, absolutely not a good idea to sell them a cancer plan. Why? Because it could jeopardize their future eligibility if a claim is paid. I think with Medicaid, you're only allowed something like $6,000 of assets. So if they get a $10,000 policy and that policy pays out a claim, that's over the $6,000. They have to then write that stuff down when they go to recertify for Medicaid. So it could cause them to lose their eligibility. So I would not advise anyone to sell a cancer plan to somebody on Medicaid. Now, how do you present the concept? Very, very similar to our concept when presenting hospital indemnity. There's a few key pointers you want to keep in mind. Number one, as you're discussing and explaining how the various products work, this is during the conceptual phase, you want to talk about the exposures and bring awareness. Okay, we call this in sales, we call this planting the seed. So typically when you're going over the summary of benefits and you get to the area of hospitalization and cancer, you generally want to talk a little bit about the exposure and really what that can mean to somebody. Things that you don't want to say is you don't want to say your plan will cost 20% for cancer or chemo, or this plan. You would much rather say many plans like yours or many plans like these, because people want to feel like they're part of a group. So when you isolate somebody and you say something like your plan is going to cost 20%, God forbid you were diagnosed with cancer, that may cause that individual to feel like they don't want that plan. So whether it's a plan that you provided to them or a plan that was provided to them by someone else, when you start to point the fingers and you say yours and this and yours, they start to feel a bit uncomfortable. And in essence, they can get very defensive. Now, they may not show the fact that they're defensive, but their defensive mechanism may step in. And then what winds up happening is the fight or flight part comes in. And I know this is like real deep psychological stuff, but it's true. The fight or flight comes in, and more often than not, in a sales scenario, the individual will choose a flight pattern rather than a fight pattern. So you may have a situation where the person just doesn't even want to even hear you that there's a solution, because they're just so stuck on the fact that you pointed out that there's something wrong with their plan. So you want them to realize that most Medicare Advantage plans work very similarly to the one that they have. The other thing you want to do is you want to talk about the concern about being in an MAPD plan, getting diagnosed at the end of the year. It's very probable that if they get diagnosed in November, December, the treatment can easily spill over to the next calendar year, which winds up immediately resetting their maximum out of pocket. And for some of you folks that sell PPO plans, or you live in regions where the PPO is the stronger fit, that could easily be $15,000 or more in out-of-pocket costs back to back. So whatever the MOOP is, 6,700, 7,400 times 2, can easily put them into a $15,000 expense. And as I say to prospects, most people can scrounge up $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 if they have to. It's not hard. You can go to your family members, and by the time you make your rounds all the way, who gives 300, who gives 200, you can scrounge up $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. Scrounging up $15,000 is a whole different scenario. It's not as easy. So to have somebody in a position where they have to come out of pocket $14,000 or $15,000 rather quickly, it could cause a lot of strain. And, the fact that the person has to deal with like fighting for their life, and now they have this emotional burden of trying to figure out how to pay for everything. You can see why cancer insurance serves a major purpose in our industry. The one thing I always talk about is trying not to overload information during the initial presentation. You want to keep the conversation tied to the summary of benefits as per CMS rules. But once you cross over the hospital and cancer areas, you want to zero in on the pain points, but you definitely want to let them know not to worry, that we have a solution. So, we're very casual about it. We'll say, something along the lines like, with cancer chemotherapy, in plans, similar to this and just like this, it's a 20% maximum out of pocket, a 20% cost for the service to the maximum out of pocket. As a reminder, your maximum out of pocket is going to be $6,700. The concern that we would have would be if you got diagnosed at the end of the year, you could essentially spill into the next year of treatment, thus paying it twice. Don't worry about it. At the end of this presentation, we have a solution. What most of our clients choose to do is to cover these gaps, where the cost would be somewhere between $40 to $60 per month. Does that sound like something that would be reasonable to you? If they say to you, absolutely not, that's too much, then you know that you have to work your presentation a little bit differently at the end. If they look at you and nod and they say, okay, then you know that $40 to $60 a month is a wise and a reasonable thing for them to do. So just little tidbits you can pick up along the way. Never be afraid to say price. People, unfortunately, 90% of them, they'll tell you, oh, you always got to sell on value, not on price. Most people will choose price, but value will drive the price. Okay. So if two guys are at $40, the one with more value will win. But if somebody's at 40 and somebody's at 60, the $60 person, if they're promoting the same value, but the $60 person just sounds a little bit better, it may entice the person to go with the 40. So we generally give a range, and the reason we give the range is because you want the people's minds to kind of cement in the bookends. They want to cement at 40 and they want to cement at 60, and they can decide whether or not that range fits them. And then you can bring in the value at that point. So very, very important. We call this a soft close, and it works. It works more than you would imagine. It works so much that I can't believe that there isn't more training out there about it. Okay, so as promised, I keep this short and sweet. We'll have our next training on Thursday at 10 a.m., and that's where I will go into all the questions. The last training we did with hospital indemnity went really, really well. I got 5 good solid questions. I hope to get 5 good solid questions for Thursday. Please comment below with them, or what everybody did the last time was they just privately messaged them to me. And don't be embarrassed. If you have a question you think is silly, there are no silly questions. There's only silly answers. Definitely hit the like button below on the YouTube channel. And if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe. We're trying to grow that membership. We're trying to catch up to our buddies out there. And then also, if you like what you hear and you want to know a little bit more about what we do, certainly send me a private message, and I'll be more than happy to share with you what we're doing for our agents. So thank you, everyone, and tune in on Thursday.